Hello everyone, this is Mirna Shuman. Today we'll be discussing fragmentation and especially fragments as an epistemic condition. First we'll say is that I begin with Gachet's interpretation of the romantic fragment where fragmentation is not broken of a part of a whole, but a condition through which the whole appears. Each fragment operates as an autonomous microsystem, yet gains meaning through its relation to others, totality, and is not achieved through completion, but through a field of relation. And in my project, this translates into a spatial system composed of autonomous planes separated by intervals, where, of course, gaps act like active spatial conditions, generating the tension and alignment between these fragments. And fragmentation becomes a thinking device rather than a formal gesture. Then we'll move to my A2 model, where the planes and the spatial fragments are fragmented and shifted, and they do not form a unified enclosure but establish relation through overlap, distance, misalignment, and creating spatial instability. And the intervals function as an active void that generates circulation, visual connection, and pauses. As well, this proceeds a subsequent reading of space rather than a fixed composition. And as well, we should always remember that the fragment is not broken, it is not a part of any big whole, it is a part that always is a remembrance of the whole that it belongs to. Then we move into my A2 model that is also connected to my photo montage, of course, and to the text that we have seen in the site, in Sanaya site, since we went there and we have already wrote a paragraph that analyzed everything around us that helped us understand more. We enhanced it using ChatGPT to make us use the correct architectural words and pronouns as well. So this is it. And then we'll move into how the chat helped us with our photo montage. Our photo montage The photo montage, it represents the site as a fragmented field of a suspended element and a discontinuous ground. And as well, an architectural reference like figures, structural lines, separated and layered, preventing a unified spatial order. And this process it has conditions of instability, suspension, vertical tension, and discontinuity. And the site is understood as a layered and unresolved, where fragmentation becomes a strategy for generation in habitable space conditions. Then we'll move into this question is how do threshold permissions and barriers determine what can be known, accessed, or experienced in the city? We'll move into a very nice building, which is the Najjar building, that represents a rigid and enclosed modernist structure in Lebanon. It creates a spatial between interior and exterior. However, the elements of it, like the curved corner, the vertical core, reveal lent spatial opportunities through voids and layered circulation. This suggests an underlying fragmentation within the building itself, which is actually very interesting. And the project responds by breaking the rigid enclosure and put spatial fragments, reconnecting with the building and its environment as well. We'll move into a few of our tracings that helped us understand the site more and help us with our DJ dwelling for the future. We have our climate diagram, which talks about the wind, the sun. Then we'll move into the elevation map, which talks about the zone of intensity and the width of the streets, for example. We'll move into the density of the buildings, the sound, where sound pollution is mostly found. And as well, we'll move into the program use, where students use it the most, where kids have already been there a lot, and the elderly, of course. Then we'll move into the Sanaya Hall itself. It reads as a field of discontinuous, including fragmented circulation and residential space. And movement is non-linear, it proceeding a sequential experience. And the design responds by distributing the autonomous fragments aligned with these conditions. As you can see, this is our class model that we did all together, which is very interesting. It shows the whole map. And my design hypothesis, which is I propose a design booth on the corner of Najjar building where fragmentation generates a dynamic spatial condition, and the rigid enclosure is broken into autonomous planes and suspended volumes, forming a network of interrelated fragments. And the gaps between them act as a porous voids, allowing light, air, and visual continuity. And the booth experienced as a sequential of spatial movement rather than a single object, and where fragmentation, of course, becomes a generator of spatial tension and relational depth. As you can see, these are some of the street section lines of our sites. This is the bottom one is Spears with the Najjar and Arida building. Then we have Donut streets, and we have Spear Street, which is facing the library and the ministry as well. Then we'll move into my A1 model that translates into an inhabitable form through fragmented horizontal platforms suspended between vertical elements, and these planes as well define zones of performance, gathering, and circulation. And the vertical poles structural introduce tension and reinforce suspension, and the gaps between the platforms create a layered spatial relation and visual continuity. And as well, and circulation occurs through shifting layers and connection that proceed as a subsequential experience. And this project remains open, allowing movement, sound, and light to follow between the fragments. And the project demonstrates how fragmentation can generate inhabitable architecture where totality emerges through relation and intervals. For example, the structural relation and load of pressure, which the project operates as a light touch intervention, and the plugin remains semi-autonomous and not fully dependent. Second, we'll move into the involved interface, which is the intervention prepares the facade selectively and it does not trap or replace the facade. Instead, it interrupts it. Then we have the threshold condition, the one we already talked about the question, which is access is implied as a layered and indirected and likely double access condition, like from the inside and from the outside. Then we'll move into the visual relation, which is the project constructs the host building geometry. And then we have the extension, which extends interior functions outward, like sleep, rest, make, and eat. And we have the environmental agencies where we have voids and gaps that allow natural light and sun to seep through, and cross ventilation and fragmentation creates. So finally, to wrap up, the plugin operates not as an object placed into the building, but as a spatial system that negotiates structure in involved and environment, remaining semi-mutual, attached, and independent. This is my model plugged into the building, and this is my final slide. Thank you.